Hi everyone, I'm Sam from the FPL Family and welcome to this week's Sam Says. We're going to talk about all things Game Week 26 this week. We should have by now had 4 games in Game Week 26. Obviously, the rest of it continues next weekend when we see the second half of the winter break teams completing their matches in Game Week 26. But Storm Kira decided to wreak havoc on the UK this weekend, on Sunday in particular, and of course that meant we lost one of our Game Week 26 fixtures. Not just one of our smaller Game Week fixtures from an FPL point of view, but one of our bigger fixtures. So lots of us with at least one, more often than not 2 or sometimes even 3 Man City players going into Game Week 26, especially given the nice fixture that they had this weekend against West Ham. There's a lot of clubs like me also that were holding on to some of the West Ham assets off the back of the double game week. So for some people out there, that's a good 2 or 3 players in their squads not playing this weekend, which let's see what happens in terms of that rearranged fixture, but it's not looking great in terms of getting some returns this weekend. So as I say, we're going to look at all 3 matches from this weekend and have a little think about what they might mean for us in terms of our future planning into Game Week 27 and beyond. So one of the more interesting fixtures of this weekend's 3 from an FPL point of view was Everton 3, Crystal Palace 1. Now these 2 sides are going in totally different directions when it comes to the fixture ticker right now. So up until this point, Everton have had a really nice run of fixtures. Since Ancelotti arrived, the fixtures have been relatively nice, and Ancelotti has changed the way that Everton play, and we'll talk about that in a little bit more detail later. But from Game Week 27 onwards, we see a fixture shift for Everton. They go from being one of the best fixture lists on the fixture ticker to being absolutely rock bottom. Crystal Palace, on the other hand, are the opposite. They're right up there at the moment with the best fixtures on paper, but what we've seen so far this season with the 2 of them is that form is definitely the other way around. So whilst Everton don't have the fixtures, they do absolutely have the form, and if we'd have taken Everton from when Ancelotti took over, they'd be second in the league right now, only with Liverpool ahead of them. Crystal Palace, on the other hand, have the fixtures coming up, but absolutely don't have the form right now. To compound that, Everton have lost only once since Ancelotti arrived, and that was to Manchester City, so one of those games that you would expect most of the Premier League sides to lose. On the flip side with Crystal Palace, they haven't kept a clean sheet now in 2 months, which is the worst one in the league, and with a further injury during this game to another key defender, that doesn't look like it's going to get better for them anytime soon. So that James Tonkin injury not looking great for Crystal Palace right now. At the end of the game, Hodgson said he'll have to have a scan. He's definitely got a hamstring problem. There's no doubt about it, and unfortunately they normally take weeks rather than days. I'm not expecting good news, but we won't know until the scan how bad it is. Really, really bad news for Crystal Palace and their defence, given, as I just mentioned, that they haven't kept a clean sheet in a while, and they've also lost Martin Kelly to injury, of course, as well. So defensively, it's really looking poor for them. At the same time that that's happening, and the lack of clean sheets, we also haven't seen Crystal Palace be that prolific in front of goal. So in terms of whether we get on them, the lack of clean sheets, the lack of goals, it does put us as FPL managers in a difficult position when it comes to Crystal Palace. Normally they are exactly the sort of side that you would want to invest in. Really nice run of fixtures, lots of green on that ticker, and so looking really positive in terms of potential for FPL returns, but the form just isn't there to invest in them. We did see a rare Benteke goal in this game. He just hasn't really been that clinical since he's been back from his injury, but then did have a long spell out on the sideline, so we would expect to maybe see him ease himself back in a little bit more gently. What we did see, however, from this Benteke reappearance in the Crystal Palace team is that it wasn't great news for Jordan Ayew, who's been playing up top on his own and has been a really nice FPL asset. Whilst he hasn't been scoring many FPL points over the course of the season so far, he is really, really super cheap. And as a result of that, it's meant that he has enabled people that have owned him to get the odd return here and there, but more importantly, to redistribute that money across the rest of their team. Since Benteke's been back, what we've seen from Ayew is that he has been increasingly playing and forced to play out on the right. Now that doesn't bode well for him in terms of attacking returns, and actually it meant that he didn't really have any threat on goal during this game against Everton at the weekend. there is also therefore a worry about his attacking potential, but also with Townsend on his way back from injury, there's a worry now as an FPL asset about whether he's going to get any minutes at all now that Hodgson has the opportunity to play Benteke and soon to play Townsend as well. From an Everton point of view, this game was, well, a bit disappointing really in the first half. Everton and Crystal Palace, neither of them really got going. But Everton did get into their stride, and what we did see is a lot of their big assets did get returns in this game. Obviously Richarlison and Dominic Calvert-Lewin, both with a goal, both assisting each other. So a goal and an assist for both of them this week. And actually they were really unlucky not to get something more in stoppage time when Guaita saved from Dominic Calvert-Lewin off of a parry from a Richarlison shot. So they were both unlucky not to have got some more points than they did in this game week. Now, when you look at what they've been doing since Ancelotti arrived, the pair of them have kind of gone a little bit under the radar from an FPL point of view. They have, however, been at the height of consistency. So over the last few weeks since Ancelotti arrived, Richarlison has averaged 6.83 points per game week, with Dominic Calvert-Lewin averaging 5.88 points per game week. So both of them looking really nice for their returns that they've been providing for their managers of late. But it goes back to what I was saying earlier. What do we do with them now? Now that the fixture shift is happening, this was kind of that last really nice fixture on the Everton radar. Now we're moving into a tougher run of fixtures. What are we going to do about our Everton assets moving forwards? So from game week 27 onwards, Everton play 7 of the top 10 sides, including in that Arsenal, Manchester United and Chelsea. Now what we can say actually from the attacking point of view is that the likes of Manchester United, Arsenal and Chelsea, none of them have really been keeping any clean sheets of late, and as a result maybe there's still potential there for the likes of Richarlison and Dominic Calvert-Lewin to still continue to get attacking returns. When it comes to the defence, however, maybe these are the players that we need to look at a little bit more carefully in terms of whether they still give us value for money. Now in game week 26, Hodgson rotated his back line. We saw Mason Holgate miss out, we saw Sidibe miss out, although Sidibe did come on 26 minutes and would have got the clean sheet points because he was on in time had Everton kept one. Obviously they lost Walcott in that game to injury, and Hodgson said that he needs to go for a scan. So if you own him as an FPL asset, potentially it's time to move him on with a minor knee injury. But from a defence point of view, I think that's something that we need to kind of question when it comes to holding them. The likes of Chelsea and Arsenal, although Arsenal haven't been prolific, they do have players that could easily put a couple past that Everton defence, the likes of Aubameyang. And for Chelsea, of course, the likes of Tammy Abraham. Manchester United, without Rashford, that could be more of a challenge. But I don't see clean sheets being prolific for Everton over the next few game weeks. Although I do think they've got the ability, particularly with their attacking players and the way that they've been playing since Carlo Ancelotti arrived, to get the unexpected returns, even though they'd be bottom of that fixture ticker. Okay then, let's take a little look at the member stats for this game. So of the 14 shots that Everton had in this game week, 9 of them came from the front two of Richarlison and Dominic Calvert-Lewin. They really were the big hitters in this game when it came to that. Since Ancelotti arrived, Richarlison and Dominic Calvert-Lewin have been ranked 2nd and joint 10th respectively for attempts on goal across all of the FPL assets in the game. So both of them looking really nice as FPL assets, and like I say, going a little bit under the radar in terms of ownership levels. Since Ancelotti arrived, no player has had more shots in the box or big chances created than Dominic Calvert-Lewin. So in terms of value for money, he looks like the value pick right now in that striker position. In this game though, it was Benteke who was top for penalty area touches with 11. On the bottom of the Scout notes for this particular match over on our website and also on the Scout Instagram page, you'll find that there are 2 heat maps of comparisons between Benteke and Jordan Ayew in this game. Really interesting to look at the two of them. Since Benteke's arrived back in the side, we've seen that Ayew has been pushed further wide out on the right hand side, and as a result he just lacked any involvement in those dangerous positions. It was all about Benteke. So actually in terms of whether Ayew is even a viable pick right now is debatable. Digne led the way for chances created this game week with 3, and in the last 2 game weeks PVA Van Arnhout has taken 8 of Palace's 15 corners, 4 of those coming in this game week. Now obviously he is benefiting from the absence of Miljokovic while he is suspended, but even so, even before that he was still taking some. So if he is going to be on corners, maybe maybe that gives him a bit more credence to stay in your FPL teams if you own him. But at 5.5 million and with the fixtures the way that they are, you would think that that would be a great option for you to own him. But the lack of clean sheets in the last 2 months would massively put me off spending 5.5 million on PVA right now. Okay then, moving on to the second game in this game week. Brighton 1, Watford 1. An own goal from Mariappa and a Decore goal in this game with assists from Yakambash and Capu. Interesting game to watch from an FPL point of view. Lots of interest in this game. Lots of more pay owners who would have been really disappointed to see him benched yet again for Murray. And lots of changes from Brighton this week in terms of their back four, which we'll talk about a bit later on. The first half, Brighton were really poor. They seemed to lack ideas, but actually in the second half there was a massive improvement from them. The low block was working from Watford until Moy forced an excellent save from Foster, and then just after that the Brighton equaliser went in. Now that equaliser, they were incredibly lucky, I suppose, to get that. It was just a very poor decision from Mariappa. Didn't really know where he was, didn't really know where the Brighton players were, and as a result ended up putting it quite spectacularly into the back of his own net. That clean sheet rules out what would have been a 5th clean sheet in 10 for Watford under Pearson, and for those Foster owners that would have been really nice. It also was the 3rd minus point return that Mariappa has had in this season so far. Yeah, really not ideal if you're a Mariappa owner, but if you're a Foster owner or own one of the other Watford defenders, I think you should consider yourself a little bit unlucky that they didn't get the full clean sheet this week. At the end of this game, Pearson said, "It was the game in which we worked very hard on possession. We were very disciplined and we frustrated them. Apart from Foster making one save in the second half, we didn't really give them too many opportunities to hurt us." Which is true, actually, they didn't. But at the other end of the pitch, they also didn't really create many opportunities themselves. There was only 5 attempts on goal in the entire game. So it was one that really lacked kind of cutting edge from either side. The Decore goal, however, was his 5th attacking return in the last 7 game weeks. So he is on absolute fire right now. He's enjoying his new role in the hold of the 4-2-3-1 formation. And he is looking like a really lovely FPL asset and a really lovely differential FPL asset too. Delafeu and Deeney have been good under Pearson since he arrived, but actually both had very, very few opportunities this week. There just wasn't much in the way of kind of creative threat from Watford going forwards. Partly that lack of threat from Watford can be put down to Ismail Assar being missing and being out through injury. His presence down the right, or his lack of presence down the right, we should perhaps say, has really, really been missed. And what we've seen is the creativity threat that Watford are bringing to the table has just tumbled with his absence. Now Pereira is sort of playing in his place, but actually there's no comparison between the two of them. And if you have a look at the Scout article on the website, you will see that there's some stats comparing Ismail Assar playing in this position and Pereira. So Sar's looking at game week 21 through game week 23 before his injury, and then Pereira looking at 24 through 26. There's just no comparison between them, and I think potentially that's why the likes of Delafeu and Deeney just weren't getting the opportunities for attacking returns that they have been in the previous game weeks when Sar was on the pitch. Both of these sides are actually fairly well owned in terms of FPL assets. Lots of people on Foster, some Decore, Deeney owners, the likes of those for Watford. From a Brighton point of view, still a lot of Matt Ryan owners out there, obviously Morpay and Aaron Moy. So there are some fairly well-owned assets across both of these sides, but for both of them, the fixtures take a massive turn now, and they're just not looking that promising. So Watford have United, Liverpool, Leicester, and then a blank in game week 31. Brighton have Sheffield, Wolves and Leicester away. Arsenal and Manchester United at home, with a possibility still that they could blank in game week 31. So neither side is looking that investable right now, but when you look at the players the teams that they are playing, both play Leicester, who defensively haven't looked that great of late, so there's potential for attacking returns there depending upon who Potter plays up front for Brighton, but you would expect that the likes of Decore, De La Feu and Deeney could get some joy out of that Watford versus Leicester game in a few game weeks' time. Same with Manchester United. You know, they've not been very good in terms of their clean sheets of late, so potential there. Likes of Arsenal for Brighton as well. Again, potential there for some goal threat. But in reality, the clean sheets don't look hugely promising for either of these sides over the next few weeks. And when you factor in that there's blank game weeks, definitely for Watford and possibly for Brighton, these are things that we need to factor into our FPL planning. And when you're thinking about when you play your wild card, whether you use it in or around game week 28 to deal with the blank that we have there with Sheffield United and Aston Villa, Manchester City and Arsenal, or whether you hold it and use it in or around game week 31 when, depending upon what happens in the next round of FA Cup fixtures between game weeks 28 and game week 29, we could have a lot of games off or not very many games off. So it's really going to be interesting to see what we do. Now, these two sides don't look hugely investable right now, but equally, if you own particularly the Watford guys, they definitely seem to be worth holding. We need to keep an eye on what Potter's doing because his rotation at Brighton right now is giving us as FPL managers a real headache. Brighton have registered just one clean sheet in 15 game weeks, which is not ideal if you're a Ryan owner, which a lot of people are. But Potter's constant tinkering isn't great for us as FPL managers either. He rotated 3 of his back 4 in this game week. He played Murray again over Morpie, who did come on as a sub. But from an FPL point of view, in many ways, it's not ideal if they come on as a sub because it's just a 1-point cameo in all likelihood, particularly if they come on late in the game. We struggle as FPL managers to invest in Manchester City sometimes because of the threat of rotation. But the difference is that those Manchester City players, they seem to get attacking returns even if they are rotated, particularly when you look towards the likes of Mahrez and Aguero. But with these Brighton players, they're getting rotated and they're not bringing in an FPL return, so it makes them really, really difficult to own. Some positives though for Brighton. March was back, Burn was back, and as Potter said, they're really important players for us going forward. And I think that's true in terms of FPL. If we're going to get some good FPL returns out of our Brighton players, good to have those guys back in the Brighton fold. Right then, so in terms of the members area stats for this game, 2 of the lowest expected goals I have ever seen. Watford 0.24, Brighton 0.76. Just highlights the lack of clear opportunities that either side created in this game. There was only one big chance in the game. It fell to Moy, it was his effort in the 76th minute, and Pereira failed to create a chance all game. So actually, in terms of those forward movements from the players, it was really that one kind of standout solo effort from Decore was the one standout thing that we saw in the game attacking wise. Okay, and the only game that we had on Sunday then, Sheffield United 2, Bournemouth 1. Goals from Billy Sharp, the Lord Lundstrom himself and Callum Wilson back in the goal scoring charts, with assists from Egan, Mousset and Harry Wilson. 3 bonus points for Sharp, 2 for Callum Wilson and 1 for Egan. Now the build up to this game was all about whether the Lord would be back in the starting lineup, and I think many of us as FPL owners hoped that in a game like this one against Bournemouth, we might see the return of Lundstrom, because it was more of an opportunity to attack in this game versus a team like Brighton, who haven't been as good as we would expect them to have been of late. So when Lundstrom was benched again, it was a big disappointment for the owners that kept him this game week. Lundstrom was the most transferred out he's ever been ahead of game week 26. Lots of managers losing patience over the fact that obviously he's been benched for a fair few game weeks now and has been coming on for just 1-point cameos here and there. Those decisions to sell him looked like a really good idea, and when that team sheet was announced an hour before kick-off, Lundstrom on the bench again. Those managers that have kind of ditched Lundstrom and moved on to often one of the other Sheffield United defenders, it looked like a really good idea until he came on and scored the winning goal and ended up on 7 points. Now that leaves us as FPL managers in a bit of a predicament as to what we do with Lord Lundstrom now. There's obviously the threat of rotation still exists. He is up against the most expensive signing that Sheffield United have ever made, and he is therefore at massive risk of rotation. alongside the other players in the Sheffield United team that can also play in that spot. So there does need to be some fight from him, and it doesn't look likely that he's necessarily going to get his space back in the Sheffield United starting lineup anytime soon. When we have a think about what Wilder said, he didn't really help us much to know whether Lundstram is going to start anytime soon. He said, "We took Lundstram out, he needed a breather. He's had a fabulous first part of the season, but we recruited well in January. They've all got to go again and try and get back in the team. John can't do anything more than what he's done over the last 2 games. He has a decision to make. Does he feel sorry for himself, or does he go out and contribute to the team? And he did that for us today." That doesn't really help us as FPL managers to know what Wilder's thinking in terms of how often Lundstram will start, but as a relatively cheap still FPL asset, I guess the question is, do you hold him knowing that you can bench him, but that you may end up benching some attacking returns, because we all know, and that's why we loved Lord Lundstram at the beginning of the season, that there's the potential that he might come on. Now this game week, he was the Sheffield United defender to own, given that the rest of them lost their clean sheet in the 12th minute. Egan did get an assist, so he was a good option, but the likes of Ender Stevenson and Dean Henderson, who a lot of people were bringing in to cover Sheffield United when they lost Lundstram, that kind of backfired a little bit this week, but they still look like potentially good assets moving forward. But do bear in mind that we are going to see them blank in game week 28, and if you've bought in Henderson, we'll see him definitely blank again in game week 31, as he can't play against his parent club Manchester United. If you're still not sure what to do with Lord Lundstram, but you do want to bring in another Sheffield United defender, Wilder's comments on the rest of them were a little bit more promising. So on Stevens, Baldock and Basham, he said it's going to have to be a good player to get Basham out of the team, Baldock and Ender Stevens. Those boys have looked and seen players have been bought in and gone, here we are, we need to go to the next level. They've gone to the next level in terms of stepping into the Premier League, and now they need to go to the next level and keep producing performances. His comments about those guys suggest that they're fairly locked in, and so if you are looking to shift from Lundstram onto one of the other Sheffield United defenders, and you can afford to bench them during their blank game week in 28, one of those 3 looks like a promising option for us. Up top though, no Sheffield United can offer us that kind of security. Captain Billy Sharp got his 3rd start in a row and obviously scored the Sheffield United equaliser, which was his 2nd goal of the campaign. McBurney has started the last 5 game weeks, but McGoldrick is back now and he was on the bench after a month-long absence. Plus there's Mousset and the new signing Zinkovic, all competing for starts. So we've got some real dilemmas from Wilder at the moment in terms of which of those striking options he's going to go with, and that makes investing in them as an attacking force really difficult, because which one is he going to play? It's really difficult to know. This season it's been all about how many Sheffield United players we should invest in. They have been so good since they've arrived in the Premier League, and now they're not far off that Champions League spot, so owning just one of them never quite seems enough. But when it comes to Bournemouth, not owning any of them has quite often seemed enough. They just haven't been the same side that we saw last season. The likes of Callum Wilson and Ryan Fraser just have not been on fire in the same way that they were last season. But actually what we saw in this game week was a bit more of a return to the Bournemouth of old. Prior to this game, Bournemouth had won back-to-back league games, and they were really unlucky not to get something out of this game. The likes of Harry Wilson and Callum Wilson, both of them were good value for their attacking returns that they got during this game week. Both of them missed good opportunities early on, and both of them actually could have opened the scoring in this game really easily. They could have got more attacking returns than they did. Ryan Fraser is a really interesting one for me. Scored absolutely nothing in the way of FPL points this week. But he looked much more like the Ryan Fraser that we knew and loved last season, the one that you always had in your team and just would never take out. He teed up Harry Wilson for a good opportunity early on. He then assisted the assist for the Bournemouth goal. Had a good opportunity parried away by Henderson for what would have been his 2nd goal of the season this year. So I don't know, maybe Ryan Fraser is one that we should kind of keep our eyes on. It would be a really nice differential FPL pick if we start to see some consistency for him. Now that's been the problem with Bournemouth, is that we just haven't seen any consistency from them over the course of the season. Now we have maybe started to see the beginnings of that in the last 3 game weeks. Although they left empty-handed this week, they were a little bit unlucky that they didn't hold on for at least a draw in this game. Having spoken really nicely about Bournemouth then, which isn't something we've been able to do on Sam Says for a little while, we then have to kind of tamper that a little bit in terms of the fixture ticker. It still makes really grim reading if you are a Bournemouth fan or if you are looking to invest in Bournemouth players from an FPL point of view. Bournemouth have to play all of the top 9 bar Sheffield United between now and the end of the season. So in terms of scoring points from an FPL point of view, it's not looking hugely great for them right now, but if they can keep that consistency that they're starting to build up going, you never know, there might be some nice differential picks for us, particularly if we come to second wildcard time, or to get us through the blank game week of 28. All right then, so the members area stats for this game. Stevens and Baldock had 9 penalty area touches between them. The 2 wing backs were ranked 4th and 8th respectively for FPL defenders over the course of this season so far. So actually, you know, in terms of their penalty area touches, to be 4th and 8th for all of the Premier League defenders, the FPL defenders in the game, that is really, really lovely, particularly given their price tags. Egan had 2 attempts on goal, taking his total to 15 for the season so far. None of the other Sheffield United defenders, leaving aside Lindstrom, can match that. So in terms of, if you're looking for a Sheffield United defender that will not only get you some clean sheet points, but offers more in the way of attacking returns, as we've got used to from Lindstrom earlier on in the season, maybe it's Egan that is the one you want to go to. And like I said earlier, with Fraser, he had the most final third touches. 8 of his 36 touches were in the final third, and he also made 4 key passes in the game, which was double anyone else on the pitch. So yeah, he did have a really, really good game, just no FPL returns. Alright guys, that's it for this week, Sam Says. If you want to read more about these 3 fixtures, they're all available in the scout notes over on our website, which contain all of the members area stats that I've talked about in this, along with heat maps and lots of tables to talk about the different players and how they performed across these 3 matches. Before you go, leave me a like, subscribe if you haven't already done so. I'll be back next week to talk about the second half of the winter break fixtures and what that means for us in terms of game week 26 as a whole. All right, guys, thanks. Bye.